China's influence across the world has expanded in recent years. But what if I told you that it was actually much deeper than you could ever imagine? All of that in this video today. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. When you look at what China has done, they've been investing in Latin America. We've got business going on in Pakistan. They're dealing with Australia. They're going everywhere, it seems. Well, first and foremost, I want to focus with the situation in Latin America because this is right in the backyard of the United States, and that poses a risk to the US, the monopoly, and of course, as they expand greater and greater, the monopoly that is the reserve currency the US has suddenly becomes challenged. I'm going to bring that right here, beginning with this, a quote from the president of Brazil. What Brazil wants to propose to China is that we need to build 100 things. Brazil's finance minister said the goal is to, quote, reindustrialize Brazil in partnership with Chinese capital. You got to realize how powerful that is coming from such high-level people in the government. They're saying it. This isn't a theory. This isn't just talk. We are actively seeing that today. That's one country, Brazil. But I'm going to show you several others here today. Realizing that we're witnessing before our very eyes billions of dollars being put into these different elements. We'll talk about that. And it isn't just one trick pony. Let me show you. Here we have more. Chinese activity in the region is changing. The narrow focus on gaining access to South America's vast natural resources, which guided its investments during the first decade and a half of the century, has broadened into a portfolio that includes ventures in renewable energy generation, telecommunications, power distribution, and even ride sharing. And as they say right here, basically that this is posing a risk to the United States. You know, that's what we can ultimately agree upon, that the US doesn't like other countries gaining power. That's for sure, right? You could see, in this case, China invests foreign direct investment in Latin America. All you need to know is that it's been expanding over the last several years, basically from nothing in the year 2000, and now they are up significantly. And that's where we talk about the next part, okay? What does China want? What are they actively seeking here? Now, there's something that they talk about in this article, and I wanted to briefly talk about it here because it is important to realize if you're a country, in this case here, China, you can use up all your own resources. But what if you bought a mine in your, some neighboring country, or maybe it's totally, all the way across the other side of the world, maybe it's Brazil. And you put a mine inside of Brazil because you want whatever products that they're selling, that they have access to, that you can easily mine. You take those and you own that mine, you own the rail that brings those resources all the way across to the port, which you own. You take that, bring it across on ships that you own across to your ports. You bring them in to your facilities and you could utilize them, refine them, and build with them. Doesn't that make a lot of strategic sense that you would want to use somebody else's resources before your own, but still be building up your own at the same time? Well, I think it makes sense in a way to look at this. And I think that's part of what they're doing. At the same time, they're establishing connections because if you have a mine in Brazil, well, obviously that's going to, you would hope, also benefit Brazil. It benefits China, benefits Brazil. What kind of workers are working there? Is it all people from China that they have working there? Or are you actually actively creating jobs in that country? Or is it sort of we're going to take a certain percentage of the total and that's the way it works? Depends on the circumstances. But you can see what they've been doing in recent years. What does China want for their money? You can see here, it's a clear shift in geographic and sectoral composition. The share of investment in raw materials has been steadily declining from about 95% in the 5 years from 2005 to 2009 to just over 41% in the last 3. China is still interested in energy, but it's no longer focusing just on fossil fuels. More and more money moving into solar and wind, investments in local services, from the electricity grid to the Club Med in Santo Domingo. This has increased, okay? And so we can see that the capital being put in is moving, by the way, not just in one country, but you see it all across. And they've been shaking a lot of hands in different parts of these countries. They're trying to actively do more and more business. And it is very natural that they want to do business, guess what? Outside of the US dollar. Isn't that so interesting? So there is a concern about the longevity of the reserve currency status of the United States, and China has made it very clear that they do not want a unipolar world, essentially one government to rule them all. They want to have some of the pie as well. They got a long way to go, of course. So there is, talk about what they're doing, billions upon billions of dollars going in. As you see, last year, Argentina signed on to China's Belt and Road Initiative that joins 20 other Latin American countries in exchange for $23.7 billion in anticipated China projects and investments. If China wants to do business in a country, if they want to sell stuff or they want to take stuff, they have to invest in their infrastructure. So they put that out there. The next aspect of that, which we may be able to cover, is some suggest it's like predatory lending. They say, hey, you can build up this infrastructure and we'll give you the investment. We'll make that happen. And of course, that's debt. But they know that they can't pay it back, or at least you could think that in the case they don't pay back, we then take that infrastructure. And that's part of what some say is going on right now with China. Next article. Essentially, this is just talking about the risk, the big risk. The United States has long served as the primary security partner for most of Latin America and Caribbean countries. US-sponsored military exercises and training, weapons and equipment sales, professional military education, and so on. Yet, there's kind of an issue happening with China. You could see wherever Washington's hesitations, China has in recent years exploited the US void in law enforcement cooperation. Through China's Safe City program, it has there are different companies, including Huawei, donating surveillance cameras, facial recognition technology to law enforcement agencies around the world. Any backdoors in those tech? Latin America, Caribbean, Ecuador, Guyana, Suriname use China's Safe City technology to try to reduce their crime. Hey, why not, right? Free stuff, we'll take it. Critics argue the tech might give China a backdoor into, there you go, backdoor, we're on the same page there, into overseas sensitive government and personal data. Also concerned that China is exporting the same intrusive surveillance and repressive policing practices it employs within its own borders. You see? That's the concern. And you could see that they also talk about, the police stations and things that they have. They're kind of expanding way beyond where they should be. That's part of the suggestion here. So they're doing a lot, going further than what anybody really believed would happen. It mentioned the different countries over here, Latin America being the one that we're focusing on. China's 2016 white paper on Latin America, the second release since 2008, stressed the need to speed up the signing process of treaties concerning judicial assistance in criminal matters and expand cooperation in areas such as fighting crimes, fugitive repatriation, and asset recovery. All of these things are, in my opinion, something that is really akin to dominance. It's happening. But what about closer to China, and that is Pakistan? Big stuff happening. China's planning to build a railway link to Pakistan through the disputed Pakistan-occupied Kashmir region, POK, that will cost about $57.7 billion. It's a 3,000-kilometer railway connecting Pakistan's port into China. So you could see there, big money being spent, and of course, just like they're doing with Latin America, this represents part of the same thing. China's multi-billion-dollar infrastructure investments in Cambodia. Look, it's everywhere. There is no region where they aren't touching. China looks to West Africa for iron ore supplies. Chinese firms have made major investments in mining projects in Guinea, Liberia, Sierra Leone, which have extensive high-quality reserves. Of course, their move could help Beijing diversify supplies, reducing its current reliance on Australia for iron ore. Because you know that they've had their battles, and China has had to kind of say, all right, fine, we don't like what's going on, but what are we going to do? We need it. Okay, you can see here, this is a Rio Tinto. Just looking at that, you can see what's happening. This is, in Western Australia, but that affects Australians as well. Because if China's not going to consume Australia's products or less of them, that will slow down the economy in Australia. So, my friends in Australia, be careful. Chinese mainland provinces plan rapid construction growth of planned spending on major investment projects year on year. So you can see the different regions around China, which are expanding greatly. And a lot of it is trying, at least, to be based on domestic consumption. So whether that's building empty cities, if they have to, apparently, that's what they're going to do. While a recovery in consumer spending following the end of the restrictions is still expected to be the main driver of growth, economic scarring from the 2020 situation, lockdowns and so on, suggests the rebounds in jobs and incomes could be gradual. It depends on where you look, but of course, they want more manufacturing. They want more infrastructure. But this all depends on what happens globally. If the globe is not strong, is not growing, they're not accessing all of that, manufacturing that China does, what does that mean? A lot of people are pointing to the developments. Vietnam is starting to get some of those factory orders and so on. This is very small in compared to China. The factories and the development and logistics supply chain, everything in China is much, much more advanced. And I've told you about my insights into that previously. So you see, China has a stronghold, but in the sense they are reliant on what happens in countries around the world that want what China has. Next aspect right here is talking about economically, in this case, jobless young Chinese seek solace in temples, tale of failed scholar, just showing you that for a lot of people, and by the way, this is happening in the United States and other places as well, where younger people are coming back to their religious beliefs, where that was kind of out of fashion for a little while. But anyway, you could see a lot of people, they don't have jobs. This is a record 11.5 million university graduates. They don't have anything. Lockdowns, everything else are basically crushing the economy. You've got China flying 38 warplanes near Taiwan, 6 Navy vessels in the area, build up of war taking place. So if the economy is slowing down, what do? You go to war, or at least attempt to go to war so that everybody can kind of, prepare accordingly, I guess. Chinese tech giant Alibaba launches ChatGPT rival. So this on the tech front, they're trying to expand. This is part of the metaverse, as they talk about in this article. China's trying to do that as well. They're trying to do everything they can. This is more about the metaverse in here. They're trying to actively compete with the United States in every means possible. They are doing so right in the backyard of the United States, being Latin America. And look, these countries are asking for China to do this. It's not as if China is forcefully coming in with guns. No, they're doing it in a different way, a non-forceful way that, in a sense, the countries might like, or maybe they're a little bit hesitant, but you can see what's happening. Everything from the infrastructure, they're pulling resources from these different countries. They're selling stuff to the countries at the same time. They're giving their surveillance equipment. They're doing all these different things, adding up to what you can see as a growing global superpower that goes much deeper than what people are willing to admit. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Let's keep this conversation going, and you got to share this with somebody who might be interested. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.